Hi friends! If this is the first time we meet, I'm Sophie Bao. The purpose of this channel is to share factual information with everyone out there who's seeking the light of truth. As always, I want to start by thanking everyone for your support, especially to those who have subscribed. Your like, comment and share is a great support to my channel. So thank you. Today, I will talk about China's goal of building an ecological civilization and its struggle with climate change. Here's the agenda. I'll start by talking about why China must take environmental issues seriously. I'll then talk about China's struggle with climate change and the building of an ecological civilization. Lastly, I'll talk about China's role in the global fight of climate change. At the end of this video, I'll introduce a long-term project that is close to my heart. So stay tuned. Let's get started. First, I'll talk about why China must take environmental issues seriously. The Chinese civilization is one of the most ancient and the only uninterrupted civilization in the world. If the uninterruptedness is due to the vast land and the strong Chinese culture, it is this land that provided the Chinese abundance is now under tremendous ecological pressure. Why? To understand why, we need to understand what ecology and China's ecological conditions are first. Ecology is the branch of biology that deals with the relations of organisms to one another and to their physical surroundings, including the causes and the consequences. To understand China's ecological conditions, we need to take a look at this map. The country's geographical surroundings have exacerbated its interregional imbalances. The land to the southeast of the Heihe-Hengchong line accounts for 43% of China's total area, but it's home to about 94% of its population, dominated by plains, rivers, low mountains, hills, and karst landforms. This part of China is under immense environmental pressure. The land to the northwest of the line accounts for 57% of China's total area, but is home to only about 6% of its population, dominated by grasslands, the Gobi Desert, oases, and the snowy plateaus. The ecosystem in this part of the country are extremely fragile. History tells us that ecological conditions directly impact the rise and fall of civilizations. Environmental degradation, particularly severe desertification, led to the decline of ancient Egypt and Babylon. Some areas of China also went through painful lessons in ancient times. For example, the desert sands swallowed up the once glorious and large kingdom of lowland. The Hexi Corridor and Loess Plateau also once boasted adequate vegetation and water, but excessive deforestation to open up land for cultivation caused severe environmental damage, which in turn aggravated the economic decline. The gradual shift of China's economic centers to the east and south of China since the middle of the Tang Dynasty was largely due to environmental changes in Western China. Over 1,000 years later, the environmental degradation on the Loess Plateau was far from being reversed. Excessive farming, particularly grazing, caused the loss of vegetation and eventually the collapse of the ecosystem. Huge dust storms formed, affecting vast areas. The consequences of this were felt as far as people in Beijing and contributed to climate change by allowing sunlight to penetrate and trapping the heat. It had reached a tipping point as people's health was adversely affected. This is why the Chinese President Xi Jinping has repeatedly emphasized that China must take environmental issues seriously. Now let's talk about China's struggle with climate change and the building of an ecological civilization. The Loess Plateau Rehabilitation Project was initiated by the Chinese government several decades ago, but not until the turn of the 21st century to come to its fruition. The project engaged local people and officials, alongside with experts on hydrology, soil conservation, agriculture, and so on. It offered the local farmers incentives to change their practices to sustainable ones. The project transformed this degraded, desertifying region into thriving, verdant and food-producing landscapes, improving the livelihoods of millions of people. The success is inspiring as it solved economic and social problems alongside ecological ones. It has not only restored the ecosystem, but also people's faith in the fight against climate change. Since President Xi took office in 2012, the CPC has made building an ecological civilization a major component of coordinated implementation of the five-sphere integrated plan and the four-pronged comprehensive strategy. The country has raised the importance of ecological protection to the highest level, which means the survival of the Chinese civilization is dependent on the advancement of all five areas of economic, political, social, cultural, and ecological. In 2015, the CPC released a milestone policy document on ecological civilization to set the basis for the creation of new policy frameworks for green and low-carbon development, including the introduction of environmental protection criteria for the performance assessment of government and party officers. As China's efforts to improve the ecosystem intensified, the country has made unprecedented progress. For instance, the Air Pollution Action Plan, announced in 2013, was a major milestone in China's building an ecological civilization. The objective was to reduce air pollution at the national level in only 5 years. Standards were set for different regions. These targets required a 33% reduction in the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region and 15% reduction in the Pearl River Delta region by 2017. China put its efforts in the reduction of emissions through energy efficiency gains and expanding the use of renewable energies, the promotion of a circular economy, afforestation, wetland conservation and restoration, and many other activities for enhancing environmental and climate protection. As a result, by 2017, the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region's PM 2.5 level came down to 58 micrograms per cubic meter, a 35% reduction. The Pearl and the Yangtze River Delta regions too beat their targets. This is equally as miraculous as China's economic records. In 2018, ecological civilization was written into the Chinese constitution. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the pristine environments are preserved for the enjoyment of future generations, and the security and stability of all types of natural ecosystems are maintained. The Air Pollution Action Plan was followed by an even more ambitious plan, the Blue Sky Wall, which is to ensure that 337 cities experience good air quality for more than 84.5% of the days by 2020. This is expected to be realized as planned. The notion of ecological civilization has increasingly taken root in the hearts of the Chinese people. Here are more examples about China's coordinated efforts on economic development and ecological protection. More than 20 million people living under China's poverty line shook off poverty through ecological poverty relief programs. My last video was about China's poverty alleviation. Please do watch if you haven't. As part of the ecological compensation mechanism, Forestry Authority nationwide have recruited a total about 1.1 million forest rangers from impoverished households since 2016. The project has assisted poverty-stricken groups by offering stable employment while contributing to ecological protection. PV power stations aid poverty alleviation in North China. PV stands for photovoltaic. Fengren district in Tangshan, a city in northern China's Hebei province, has seen dramatic changes after a PV power station was built on its barren mountains. The construction was part of a government project to help lift residents out of poverty. PV power stations now cover over 66 hectares of Tangshan, providing 28 million kilowatt-hours of clean electricity each year to residents. Environmental protection bears fruit in East China's port city. The city of Zhangjiagang in East China's Jiangsu province has seen achievements in environmental protection following industrial renovation and ecological restoration in recent years. China is en route to winning its war on pollution. However, China's plan goes far beyond the 5 to 10 years timeline and the limitation of our planet. For instance, China's artificial sun and space station projects will have wider and deeper implications on human survival as well as advancement. Just before recording this video, on the 4th of December, China has successfully powered up its artificial sun nuclear fusion reactor for the first time. It's designed to be a clean energy source similar to the real sun. The development of nuclear fusion energy is not only a way to solve China's strategic energy needs, but also has great significance for the future sustainable development of China's energy and national economy. So, what do China's achievements mean to the world? Now let's talk about China's role in global mitigation of climate change. China attained its 2020 climate action targets 2 years ahead of schedule, a major contribution to the global response to climate change. Non-fossil fuels now take up nearly 15% in China's total energy consumption. China has 30% of the world's installed capacity of renewable energy, accounting for 44% of the world increase. Its new energy vehicle stock is more than half the world's total. China has contributed 25% to the increased afforestation areas worldwide since 2000. In the UN's General Assembly marking its 75 years anniversary, President Xi pledged in his speech that China would reach CO2 emissions peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality ahead of 2060. This would help lower global warming projections by 0.2 to 0.3 degrees Celsius. These are strong indications of China's making active efforts of shifting towards low-carbon economic growth patterns and the country's leading role in global mitigation of climate change. That's all for today. As a long-term project, I plan to make a series of videos on Chinese classics. The first series will be about the Book of Changes, I Ching. This is the oldest Chinese text created 7,000 years ago, when written language was at its infancy. It is in this book that the concept of yin and yang is first introduced. The famous Chinese philosopher Confucius was heavily influenced by this book. It is fundamental to understanding the Chinese civilization. So stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so that you'll be notified. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Take care.